The day the galaxy discovered humanity's true scale. Welcome, cosmic explorers, to a universe of endless stars and countless civilizations. For millennia, the Galactic Diplomatic Alliance, or GDA, believed it understood the natural order of things. We charted the known galaxy, catalogued species by their strength, their technology, their diplomatic prowess. But then, we found humanity, and everything we thought we knew was about to be irrevocably shattered. Tonight we delve into a pivotal moment in galactic history, recounted directly from the official report of Ambassador Xylos, a seasoned diplomat from the Quigwoth people. My people, the Quigwoth, are known for their meticulous nature and our own famously fragmented governments, which made me, Xylos, uniquely suited for this assignment. My mission: to visit a place humans call the Sol System, the very cradle of their civilization. This was the GDA's first official, authorized visit in over 80 standard years since humanity's initial discovery. And let me tell you, it was a visit no one, especially myself, would ever forget. When humanity was first discovered, the standard GDA protocols kicked in. We extended the customary invitation, "Would you like to join the Galactic Diplomatic Alliance?" Their response was polite, almost disarmingly so, but unequivocally firm, "No." They also made another polite, yet firm, request. "Please, do not visit our cradle world unless you receive specific permission and detailed flight plans from one of our government agencies." Now, this wasn't entirely unheard of. The galaxy is vast, and there are many isolationist species who prefer to keep to themselves, with no desire to be part of broader galactic affairs. And honestly, humanity's position in the cosmos didn't exactly scream galactic powerhouse. Their system was far removed from most established galactic civilizations, tucked away in a quiet arm of the galaxy. And their technology, well, to put it diplomatically, it seemed quaint, basic even. Primitive, some scoffed. Truthfully, there was little interest in involving them anyway. We had so much to gain from established empires, so little from a species that seemed content to keep its head down in a distant, quiet sector of space. Or so we thought. The notion that humans were isolationists, however, was quickly turned completely on its head. Not long after our initial contact, humanity began an ambitious project that would redefine galactic interaction: the establishment of their interstellar colony, Alexandria. This wasn't just another outpost. After the initial infrastructure was completed, a monumental task that, as we later learned, they had apparently begun well before we even discovered their people. The humans did something unprecedented. They opened the colony, not just to all humans. They invited anyone who wished to live, travel, or study there to come as well. Anyone. This was a concept almost alien to many of us. An entire new world, built by a single species, then offered freely to the galaxy. At first, the response from the broader galactic community was slow. Skepticism ran high. Why would an established species move to a human colony, a place so far from their own kind? But then, word began to spread like a hyperdrive flare through the void. Visitors raved about their experiences. They spoke of vibrant markets where human traders, with their oddly expressive faces, bartered goods in dozens of alien tongues. They talked of bustling educational centers, where complex human sciences were taught with a passion and clarity previously unknown. Immigration from across the galaxy to Alexandria soared. This open-door policy quickly became a vibrant two-way street. The galaxy was introduced to many of the goods and cultural works humanity had to offer. Their incredibly diverse and often mind-boggling array of foods, each bite an explosion of unexpected flavors. Their soul-stirring and often baffling music that defied known harmonics, yet resonated deep within our varied anatomies. Their unique scientific and educational systems that prioritized individual curiosity and hands-on experimentation over rote memorization. Their robust and efficient construction methods that seemed to they even shared their strange, complex games, like chess and basketball, which became surprisingly popular, fostering unexpected interspecies rivalries and camaraderie. And in return, our cultures and technologies found their way to humanity, being absorbed and integrated with a speed that was almost unsettling. Trade skyrocketed. Whispers began circulating through GDA halls. Perhaps we should ask them again. Surely, with Alexandria, they'll see the benefits of joining now. So, we did. We extended the invitation once more, certain they would accept, and yet, for the second time, they politely but firmly declined. This confused us. Etala shachalapas, etala shachala. Deeply, but we had learned a little more about them since the first refusal. While they weren't necessarily the isolationists we initially thought, they were incredibly fragmented. There wasn't a singular, human government as we understood it. Instead, there were hundreds, perhaps even thousands, of distinct human governments scattered across their homeworld and burgeoning colonies. Alexandria itself was recognized as an independent entity, separate from any of the governments in the Sol system. To say that this would make it difficult for them to choose any singular ambassador to represent them in the GDA would be a monumental understatement. Still, they wouldn't be the only fragmented species in the GDA. My own people, the Quigwath, for example, have no less than a dozen distinct governments, each with its own customs and protocols, each vying for influence. This internal complexity is perhaps one of the reasons I, Ambassador Xylos, was chosen for this assignment. My people have developed intricate methods for navigating such fragmentation, and they seem to work quite well, if I do say so myself. Still, the humans refused, and the GDA, in its infinite wisdom, simply shrugged. If they didn't wish to join, we weren't going to force them. We had bigger concerns. And while trade had drastically increased after the establishment of Alexandria, it still represented less than a fraction of a percentile of the total trade any single GDA member was involved in. Their corner of the galaxy was simply too remote, too insignificant. We still believed we had little to gain directly from them, and frankly, they couldn't be of much aid anywhere outside of their distant, quiet sector of space. Or so we had thought. Our comfortable assumptions about humanity, and indeed about the galaxy itself, were about to be violently torn apart. That was until the Shutik invasions began, the unstoppable swarm, and the unlikely stop. As the committee members are painfully aware, the Shutik invasion began with terrifying speed and ferocity. Their swarms, driven by an almost pathological need for expansion due to severe overpopulation, erupted from the uncharted void on the very outskirts of our territory. Their advance was swift, brutal, and utterly overwhelming, expanding inward towards our core worlds like a malignant tide. Planets were sterilized, populations decimated, entire civilizations reduced to dust. We witnessed horrors we had never imagined possible. The screams of dying species echoed across subspace channels. At the same time, they began invading systems closer and closer to the Sol system as well, pushing deeper into this arm of the galaxy. Thankfully for all involved, though we didn't know it at the time, Alexandria was safely positioned on the opposite side of Sol, relative to the direction of the Shutik's devastating invasion. We resisted them with every ounce of our might, every starship, every soldier, every defense platform we possessed. The initial assessments of the Shutik's technology had been alarming. Their vessels, crude and almost archaic compared to our sleek, advanced warships, seemed to be held together by little more than raw biological force, emitting a faint, disturbing hum that grated on our sensory organs. Our energy shields could withstand their plasma blasts, our mass accelerators could rip through their chitinous hulls. It would have seemed like we stood a chance, a clear technological advantage, but we were quickly, horrifyingly overwhelmed by their sheer, unimaginable numbers. We could destroy scores of their vessels, but hundreds more were always waiting in the wings, replacing their fallen as if from an endless void. Our forces were quickly overrun. And despite our sacred pledge to defend our member species from outside aggression, we were helpless to do so. Our technology, our courage, our unity, none of it mattered in the face of such an unstoppable, relentless tide. The galactic map was simply being repainted in blood and green chitin. Despair was a tangible thing, settling over the GDA like a shroud. Thankfully, the invasion would prove to be rather short-lived, and the reason for its sudden cessation was the most incredible, and frankly, the most unlikely of things. The Shutik invasion reached the Sol system, and then, it simply stopped. For the sake of posterity, for future generations who might be reading this report, and somehow, inexplicably, not be aware of the infamous GDA-Shutik War. Let me reiterate this crucial point. The Shutiks stopped at Sol. They were not beaten back by a desperate last stand. They did not break against an unseen defense. They were not crushed or repelled or routed, or any other term militarily minded individuals often used to describe a defeat. No, the Shutik reached Sol, and then, every single member of the species that was off their homeworld, in the entire galaxy, came to a complete, inexplicable halt. Then, in perfect, eerie synchronization, they turned around, went back into their ships, and retreated. It was as if a cosmic switch had been flipped, silencing a raging storm with a whisper. An oppressive wave of dread that had gripped the galaxy for cycles simply lifted. How did they accomplish this? What grand, devastating weapon did they unleash? What unheard-of tactical genius did they employ? At the time, we didn't know. Truthfully, we weren't even aware that the Shutik had reached the Sol system. Our sensors in that distant sector had long since gone silent under the overwhelming swarm. It was only much later, when we, the GDA, somewhat hesitantly, somewhat optimistically, demanded reparations from the retreating Shutik, that we received an unexpected response. They not only agreed to pay, but began to pay back with human credits. The results of the first delivery of such credits are still, to this day, classified by the GDA's intelligence agencies at the highest levels. My personal briefing prior to this assignment was, to put it mildly, frustrating. Most of the pages were simply blacked out, redacted beyond recognition. All I could really glean from those heavily censored documents was that the delivery was made by a single Shutik drone. This drone, surprisingly, displayed an almost childlike level of intelligence and autonomy. Simple-minded, perhaps, until you considered its prior state. During the war, Shutik drones possessed virtually no intelligence whatsoever, unless they were under the direct, telepathic control of the Queen, or one of her Farminds. This was a significant, bewildering departure from their known behavior. This particular drone, its multifaceted eyes blinking with a strange, innocent curiosity, even attempted a halting, rudimentary form of galactic common speech as it offered the first payment. Queen says, "Sorry," it chirped, its voice a surprising mechanical whine, almost like a newly activated construct. Humans, good talkers, want to learn. This crucial detail was, of course, heavily redacted in my official brief, marked with the highest security clearance, perhaps to prevent panic, or perhaps to hide the profound implications of such a development. I would later learn, much later, and ironically from the humans themselves, that this change in Shutik behavior was because they had developed what humans called artificial sapience for their hive drones. Coincidentally, the humans made no secret of having helped the Shutik develop this astonishing technology. I'm sure this crucial detail was included somewhere underneath the literal sea of black ink that the GDA intelligence agency provided me. It was a detail they clearly didn't want widely known. It implied a level of technological capability, and more importantly, a willingness to share and collaborate with even their aggressors, that was utterly alien to our understanding. What I also learned, piecing together more snippets of information than I really should have had to, was that this unexpectedly intelligent drone revealed to the GDA that the Shutik had stopped the war and were now willing to pay vast reparations after engaging in extensive diplomatic talks with the humans. And this was why it was deemed of the highest priority to send me, Ambassador Xylos, to the Sol system. My mission was to navigate the humans' far more complex and convoluted bureaucracy, a bureaucratic labyrinth that made the GDA's own seem like a simple pleasure cruise. If humanity, these quaint dwellers of a backwater system, could somehow find a way to open diplomatic channels with a force that had, to the GDA, been so utterly unwilling to negotiate as the Shutik, a force that literally ignored all other races in the galaxy, a force we could only fight, not reason with. Well then, backwater or not, primitive technology or not, we desperately needed them in the Alliance. Their diplomatic skills alone were a resource beyond measure, and this, committee members, is where I must finally get to the heart of my report. And it is with a heavy, yet oddly awestruck heart, that I must inform you that, sadly, humanity will not now, nor ever, join the Galactic Diplomatic Alliance. Their reasons are unusual, unprecedented, but after witnessing them firsthand, they make perfect, terrifying sense. It could simply never be fair. The unfathomable scale of Sol. Let me try to explain. Using what I witnessed firsthand, our approach to the Sol system was carefully orchestrated. The humans provided us with a dedicated pilot, a young, earnest human named Kai, whose eyes held a curious twinkle. He was here to better coordinate with what they called space traffic control. As we neared the system's outer markers, Kai, with a relaxed smile that seemed almost impossible given the circumstances, casually remarked that he was grateful it was light traffic today. My internal senses, my very perception, struggled violently to reconcile his words with the reality unfolding outside our viewport. I've been to the Fleet Day parades on Helcon, home to the largest starship fleet in the quadrant, a spectacle of coordinated might and a logistical nightmare in itself. The skies during those parades become so congested with vessels, so densely packed, that you can barely see the stars through the sheer number of craft flying overhead. What I was witnessing now was worse. Far, far worse. My Quigwath optical sensors, usually capable of resolving individual particles in a nebula, began to stutter, then overload, finally displaying a generalized pulsating red density exceeded warning. The ship's internal environmental regulators hummed louder, compensating for the sheer heat radiation from the incomprehensible number of active engines around us. I felt a strange, tingling pressure in my auditory canals, as if the very fabric of space was vibrating with the collective hum of billions of engines. My usual Quigwath calm, honed over centuries of diplomatic composure, began to fray. A rising tide of disorientation and a primal sense of being utterly swallowed replaced it, an instinctive urge to retreat from the sheer overwhelming presence of humanity. "Ambassador, are you all right?" Kai's voice cut through my internal turmoil, his expression one of mild concern. "You look a little green." "It's just a busy sector, nothing to worry about." He gestured vaguely at the chaos that was consuming our view. As we continued our agonizingly slow approach, inching closer to their homeworld, a planet they called Earth, it didn't get any better. It escalated into something truly apocalyptic. Still, our human pilot, Kai, remained utterly nonchalant, relaxed even, occasionally humming a strange, rhythmic tune that seemed to defy the chaos. Meanwhile, outside, there were so many craft around us, so many ships, so many colossal orbital platforms that were entire cities in themselves, glittering with countless lights and teeming with life, so many transport vessels of every conceivable size and shape, ferrying goods and beings between structures, that even the brilliant, life-giving light of their home star, Sol, and indeed all other stars visible from our position, was completely blotted out. The void was no longer black, it was a swirling, humming, blinding tapestry of human construction and traffic. We were moving through a literal, impossibly dense ocean of civilization, a hyper-complex, self-sustaining ecosystem of metal, light, and life that stretched further than my mind could process. Every single point of light was a vessel, a habitat, a life. If you can even begin to truly comprehend that, if you can picture a sky so utterly filled with vessels and structures that starlight itself is obscured, then you will perhaps begin to understand that there is likely another, far more terrifying reason that the Shutik swarms, those relentless engines of expansion, driven by severe overpopulation, suddenly responded diplomatically to humans after reaching the Sol system, rather than simply warring with them. It was not just diplomacy, committee members. It was a cold, hard, horrifying calculation. Humans outnumber them by a factor of at least 10 to 1. Ambassador Xylos. I imagine a committee member, perhaps a particularly skeptical Zyklor, might interject, his multi-jointed arms flailing. That cannot be correct. Our demographic projections, our historical data on nascent species, that's simply impossible. No, esteemed Zyklor, I would reply, my voice unwavering, despite the tremor still running through my sensory organs. That is not an error in my report. My data, once the sensors recovered from their overload, and I had our navigators cross-reference with human-provided quote traffic manifests, is verified. And no, That staggering number does not include the populations of the myriad colonies humans possess outside of the Sol system, like Alexandria. Those are merely their overflow settlements, and no humans did not come from another galaxy, with Sol being merely their first colony here. They originated from that very planet, Earth. In this single system, this single comparatively small star system, the humans possess a population that outstrips both the entirety of the Shutic swarms and the entirety of the GDA combined, and they do so by a massive, mind-boggling margin, a factor that defies conventional astrophysics and resource management. Honestly, even seeing it firsthand, even flying through it for days, I cannot fully fathom how they accomplished such a feat. It defied all known principles of sustainable population and resource management. It defied logic. Every rock big enough to stand on they had built a city upon, its surface a glittering maze of lights, its interior a hive of activity. And if there was no such rock, they simply built a continent there anyway. Colossal, artificial land masses, kilometers thick, teeming with life and infrastructure, floating gracefully in the void. These city continents were often interconnected by glowing energy conduits, a vast pulsating network that hummed with the energy of 1,000 stars. Endless streams of ships, billions upon billions of them, traveled to and from these places, connecting a civilization of unimaginable scale. And nearly all of them, our pilot Kai noted with a cheerful shrug that still unnerves me, had sentient pilots and crews on board. It was not automated, it was alive. It was a testament to a species that saw empty space not as a void, but as an opportunity for expansion, a canvas for boundless growth. The very concept of empty space was alien to them. They filled it. The Shutic, with their desperate, instinctual need for space, for resources, for expansion, must have seen this. They must have been confronted, not by a defensive line, but by a wall of sheer, incomprehensible existence. They likely made peace specifically to acquire that knowledge. The secret to sustaining such an unfathomable population density. They weren't looking for territory to conquer in Sol, they were looking for the secret to its boundless capacity. They sought to learn from humanity, not to conquer it. So then, let me be abundantly clear on why humans will not, cannot, join the Galactic Diplomatic Alliance, despite seemingly being amenable to it. Their reason is simple, unshakable, and in its own way, profoundly human. It could simply never be fair. If the humans joined based on our standard species clause, they would receive only a single vote. A single vote that is meant to represent the will of, by my best estimate, since our sensors finally gave up attempting to count the number of ships and inhabitants around us, and simply displayed a generalized error overflow message, a message I have come to respect as the highest indicator of human scale. At least 3/4 of the galaxy's entire sentient population. Imagine that, the vast majority of the galaxy's sentience, represented by a single solitary voice in our council chambers. It would be a mockery of democracy, a grave injustice to their own people. Their voices, their needs, their immense contributions would be silenced by an archaic rule designed for smaller, more manageable populations. On the other hand, if humans demanded a vote proportional to the size of their population, the GDA would simply be dominated by them. Every single decision, every policy, every resource allocation, it would all be dictated by humanity. Our species, our cultures, our voices would be utterly drowned out. We would effectively become a mere footnote in a human-dominated galactic assembly. Our diplomatic concerns, our unique needs, would be utterly overshadowed by the sheer weight of their numbers. It would be galactic rule by benevolent, accidental conquest. I understand why the committee, and the alliance as a whole, would otherwise desperately want the humans on board. Their technology, as I discovered upon closer inspection, is actually far more advanced than we initially gave them credit for, more so than any reading this report likely understands. Most of the vessels that venture beyond their cradle system, the ones we initially scoffed at as primitive, are actually considered basic or even antiquated by their own standards. These are their rugged workhorses, their simple, efficient ships built for external interaction, perhaps intentionally designed to appear less threatening. They're true technological marvels, the ones that build artificial continents, manage billions of ships with flawless efficiency, harness planetary energies on unprecedented scales, and sustain populations on unimaginable scales, remain almost entirely within their home system, hidden from casual observation. They do not flaunt their true capabilities to the outside galaxy, an act of almost humbling restraint, a quiet understanding of the power they wield. Furthermore, their cultural works and goods are, as Alexandria has shown, highly desired across the galaxy, yet surprisingly affordable to all, from the lowest born to the elite. And, perhaps most importantly, they were able to engage diplomatically with the Shutik, a species that had ignored every single attempt at negotiation from all other races in the galaxy. Their ability to bridge such a vast chasm of communication and conflict, to turn a rampaging swarm into a learning partner, is unparalleled. It speaks to a profound understanding of life, even life that means to destroy them. But such an occurrence, their full integration into the GDA, will never come to pass. And I believe, with a strange mix of relief and awe, that they refuse to do so more for our sake than for theirs. They understand the fundamental imbalance. They grasp the overwhelming weight of their numbers, and they choose to remain outside, a friendly, awe-inspiring neighbor, rather than an accidental, benevolent overlord. They prefer to collaborate, to trade, to explore, but not to dominate through sheer presence. The Sol System Committee members is not a backwater. It is a galaxy within a galaxy, and humanity is not just another species. They are a force of nature, a teeming, vibrant, unfathomable civilization, whose true power lies not in weapons or grand empires, but in their sheer unimaginable scale. And in their profound wisdom to keep that scale separate, for the sake of galactic harmony. We are fortunate, perhaps, that they are so benevolent. And we should, perhaps, rethink what quaint truly means. Because what seems quaint from a distance can become utterly overwhelming up close.